On this episode of SEGA Talk, we discuss the 1988 arcade classic Gain Ground. How did this game translate to the Mega Drive and Master System? Does the game have memorable characters and story? What legacy has it left? We discuss all this and more on SEGA Talk. SegaBits presents SEGA Talk, a podcast talking all things Sega! With your hosts, George and Barry.
Look, it's a giant talking egg. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the master here. So what?
Hello and welcome to episode number 140 of SEGA Talk. I'm Barry, and gaining ground with me is George.
That's a good intro. That's pretty good. Hi, everyone.
So, if you're new to the program, what we do on this show is we talk about something Sega. It's typically a game. It's typically randomized, but we try to jump around the eras. But a key factor to keeping our show going are our Patreon supporters. And so I just wanted to give a shout out to a new patron at the Dreamcast tier. That is Zachary Ross, so welcome. And he will be picking future episodes along with our other Patreon pickers who, you know what, I should really, call them out, too, right. Shouldn't I? That's only fair.
So is there, an easy list on Patreon? Because I look at it and I don't know if they changed the UI on that or what.
You know, they did mess around with the UI, but what I go based off of is our secret Google Doc that's shared with our Patreon pickers. We have Nicholas Schaefer and Bobbert, and they both are avid pickers. And there's some people who want to be pickers, and I don't know if they got the message from me that they're not pickers yet. So you can't keep messaging me going, I want to talk about Shenmue, and I'm like, well, you gotta pick. But George, quickly tell them about the Patreon. Tell them about it.
So if you guys go check us out on patreon.com/SegaBits, you could check out our tiers there. Like Barry said, there's a tier where you pick your own level. You'll get the show early, a week early. And there's discussions going on. And I think we're going to be posting more stuff on Patreon. So you guys should be checking it out. Hopefully a couple of videos. I've been discussing ideas to do some stuff solo. So check that out. Definitely at patreon.com/SegaBits if you like the show and want to support us.
Absolutely. So this episode is not a pick. In fact, this episode was going to be on the R360 arcade cabinet. However, and I'm not going to turn this into a rant, but
it's already,
it already is turning into one. So about 2 weeks ago, Galloping Ghost Arcade opened their expansion, and they kept saying, oh, the expansion, it's got the R360 there, it's got the Galaxy Force 2 machine, it's got Super Thunderblade, awesome. So the next week we did our SegaBits Presents Arcade Adventure 2 meetup. Despite the fancy name and graphics and free sticker, it really is just like your classic arcade hangout and meetup. I think people were actually surprised they showed up and they were like, so what are we supposed to do? And it's like, play games and talk to people.
No, that's not what they wanted to do.
Right. But it went really well. We had, I think, between probably around 14 people there, including Dakota and Patrick, a.k.a. Corey Maru, who are contributors to SegaBits. They do a lot of convention correspondence and they write the occasional articles. But yeah, so we had a great time. But I was disappointed to learn that the expansion opened. It's like a whole new building, but the back area is still not open. They're still fixing or repairing or whatever the R360. So I'm like, this better happen soon because I'm itching to try it. But what's funny is someone was looking at the room back there. Some YouTuber was back there with a video camera. And I walked in, and the guy working for the arcade looked at me, and he looked at the guy and said, is he with you? And the guy was with the camera was like, no. And then the guy's like, you can't be in here. It's closed. And I'm like, oh, I thought it was open. It's not. It was very awkward.
I was going to say, so they're expanding, meaning they bought more space from a different company that's nearby?
Yeah, so they're a whole city block, basically.
What
now?
So there's a lot of money to be made in Chicago with arcade machines, at least for these guys.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're closing in on 1,000 games, And so, having said that, despite the R360 not being playable then, it will be soon. But what I did was I was like, well, I got to pick a game. So why not pick an arcade game at the Galloping Ghost? And what I picked was Gain Ground. And I picked this game because it's something I wouldn't pick, and I almost feel like it's something a Patreon picker might pass over. So why did I pick this? Well, we'll get into it. So Gain Ground, it released in 1988 to arcades for the Sega System 24 arcade platform. And if you recall that one, it's pretty close to a Sega Genesis. So a lot of the System 24 games, one that I think comes to mind is Shinobi. They're pretty close to the Genesis. The game itself, it's a top-down gun game with strategy elements, with players controlling one of 20 characters who must defeat all the enemies on screen or bring every character that the player currently has to the exit. The game was ported in 1990 and 1991 to the Master System and Mega Drive, respectively. So, George, do you have any memories of Gain Ground?
I do. I played the Sega Genesis version. I actually think this game is, pretty underrated. It looks really generic. I remember when I first played it, I was, going through games, and I was like, Gain Ground. Literally never heard of it. Saw the box art, did not play it. I put it in the back still, and played other games. And then one day I played it, and I thought it was really fantastic. It has a really good... so the Genesis version seems to have, one song, but regardless of it, it's a really good song.
Right.
Just a really fun game. The arcade game, I played it a little bit, not a lot. So outside of that, I think the game, like you said in the beginning, is it generic? And yeah, I think that's the issue with the game. It's very unappealing art-wise, I think, and character-wise. But gameplay-wise and music and controls, I think, are really, really good for what I remember playing. You? Right,
yeah. I have very little memory of this game outside of really seeing the arcade machine at Galloping Ghost and seeing the box art. Like you said, and like I've said, it's a very generic-looking game. I think it's best to think of Gain Ground almost like a board game, video game. And, I'm a huge, huge fan of the board game Stratego. If you've ever played that,
no.
It's the red and blue pieces. The board has it's a overview of a battlefield with two lakes, and you basically it's like capture the flag. Basically, you hide the flag, and then you go through and work your way through and try to find the flag. It's a lot of fun, but when you look at the box, it looks very generic. It just looks like it almost looks like Risk, but a little easier to play, and Risk itself is kind of a generic looking game too. But yeah, Gain Ground, it really is a cult classic, I think, because people who have played this game and love this game really love this game. Every review that I was seeing, between Sega 16, Hardcore Gaming 101, people were just 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10. This game's fantastic. But, why did this game kind of fall by the wayside? And I think as we work through the different aspects of the game in this episode, I think we'll see why it both is a great game and also a game that people just don't think about. The developers of the game actually refer to Gain Ground as an algorithm action game.
Yeah, algorithm.
Which is,
all right. All the math.
Super nerdy. And as mentioned at the top of the show, players must either eliminate all the enemies of the level or evacuate all the members of their team from the level by moving them to the conveniently placed exit signs. And what soldier doesn't wish that a battlefield had a big red flashing exit sign?
Right.
So which method you use to complete the stage is typically dependent on the map screen, but what I've heard and what I've experienced in most cases, destroying the enemies is kind of an easier route because you don't need to make it to the end of the stage through the little maze or anything. It's really just, stay at the bottom and shoot everyone as much as you can. But it's a strategy game, so, you can pick different methods. Every character in the game has strengths and weaknesses, and not unlike a real-time strategy or role-playing game. And to effectively play the game, players must use the right character in the right situation. In addition to the enemies you battle on the ground, some enemies are on a higher ground and can only be defeated with characters who possess specific, like, airborne weapons. So each character, they have a regular and a special weapon, and each character has their own movement speed. So that's pretty much it's very basic because this is an arcade game. So don't expect something like, I guess, Valkyria Chronicles, levels of intricacy here. It's really, low power attack, high power attack, and depending on the character, their speed. And of course, there's a primary weapon button and a special weapon button, which is great for, like, the Master System, which only has 2 buttons. So it's kind of, forward and backward thinking in that regard, because when they made this game and you look at the arcade machine, it's joystick and 2 buttons, and that translates to any of the Sega stuff out at the time for home console gaming. And each character, they have 1 life and a single hit, which sounds like it kind of sucks, but when you consider that there are multiple characters to play as, it's not so difficult. When the players are defeated, a small symbol remains on the battlefield, and fallen characters, they can be rescued and taken to the exit. However, if the character saving the downed character is killed, the previously defeated character will disappear. So it's like double death, basically. Right. Or maybe, if you're a Phantasy Star Online fan, if you remember, like, lying there dead and typing, please save me, revive.
Or it's like very already, I guess, forward thinking. I mean, even like SRPGs like Valkyria Chronicles, if you have a downed character, you could get a medic to come in and take them out of if you get near them, I guess. So yeah, it is very interesting that they it's an action game, really. I mean, it's not, but it's also straight. So they did a good job combining them, obviously.
And it's interesting, Sega kind of classifies it as a shooting game, which I never would really consider that. But it is, yeah. Right. And if you look at the back of the Mega Drive box art, if you remember, they have the little icon. They show a basically the shmup icon. It's the spaceship, which is so deceiving because you're like, oh, there's spaceships in this? No, not really.
They should be.
So normal. Well, in the later levels, we'll get to it. Normal mode starts with 3 players, and captive characters are littered across the level, and they can be rescued and escorted to the exit. In hard mode, the player starts the game with all 20 characters, but all the captive characters are removed from the levels. The game is divided into eras, which each era divided into 10 levels, and at the final level of an era, you face a boss. So here's the eras as they follow. So in the arcade version, they go Primitive Age, Europe in the Middle Ages, China before Revolution, and Robot in the Future. The Mega Drive Genesis version eras go Primitive Age, Europe in the Middle Ages, China before Revolution, Present Age, and Robot in the Future. And the Master System version eras go Primitive Age, the Middle Ages, the Modern Age, the Near Future, and Gain Ground, the final era. Oh, yeah. Which is kind of interesting because the Master System, despite being like, the most downgraded one, it's kind of sounds like the most epic one with the Present Age and that modern, final, that final sounding stage.
Near Future in the 80s, so that would be like the 90s, 2000s. So near past.
I guess like 1988 is I guess 1990 maybe is their near future.
I was going to say, what do you think about like the idea of these shooting games? Like they get kind of crazy with the whole like, oh, you go to all these eras. The only one I could think of is also like what's that game called? Gunsmoke for the NES, where you like there's ninjas randomly, or you go to this other one, it's medieval times and there's robots, or like I guess TMNT is part of the plot, but traveling in time and then fighting dinosaurs. Like, what do you think about that kind of like idea of moving around through time eras?
Well, it's actually, it's smart because it's a really easy way to think up stages without, going the Sonic route of like snow level, forest level. Instead, it's
Right.
Just
whatever, whatever we want.
Right, and we'll get into the plot to the game, and I think things will make a little more sense. Right. But as far as the gameplay, what are your thoughts on the game's gameplay?
The game, well, I think it's probably the only thing that saves it. If it didn't have the gameplay attached to it, I don't think people would even be fans of it. Like, there's some games that are not the greatest games to play, but they have like an art style or something that sells the game and it's remembered for that. Like,
right.
Some people would even say that, I don't agree with this, but some people would say Jet Set Radio is one of those games where the art style made it what it is and the gameplay hinders it.
Yeah.
I don't think the gameplay is that bad. I think it has aged because of the camera stuff, but I still think the game is pretty fun to play alone by itself. I think this is one of those games where the gameplay and the music are the biggest selling factors. So yes, the gameplay is epic, very good.
Yeah, I think really, a good gameplay makes a good game. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of hard to say to this game that the only downside is that the only good thing is the gameplay. When it's like, well, that's all you need,
right?
But I think, and as we'll see as we go through this, that it just doesn't really shine in any of the other areas. Like even a game like Quartet, which a lot of people don't talk about, but people who do are like, oh, the characters are super fun and the music's really good. Oh, and the gameplay's great. Like in this game, the music's catchy, but you hear it a little bit too much. The characters, which we'll run through, are kind of forgettable, and the plot is really pushed to the side to the point where you need to read a manual to know what is going on. But having said that, when you jump into this game, once you get into the gameplay, it really hooks you. But I think especially in arcades, a great arcade game brings you in with like a character or a name. And I think the name Gain Ground is what it is. It's kind of like Connect 4. I played this with Dakota actually at Galloping Ghost, and we were playing it. He goes, oh, you're literally gaining ground. And I'm like, yeah, it's like the best title, right, but it's also super boring.
But it looks boring. Like if you see someone playing it, you don't really I don't know. It looks kind of boring compared to like Daytona, which, flying 3D cars, you're sitting in an actual seat with blaring music. This game just doesn't have that like inviting factor. Like there's games in arcades that draw you for different things, obviously, right? Like House of the Dead with the zombie and the light guns. But
right.
Like, this one doesn't seem to have that, like, really. So it's like, what would appeal to people to, like, put a quarter in and try it?
Right. And I mean, I'm not spoiling the plot or the story in saying that this whole game is a simulation. But I think the title would have been catchier, and this is maybe a little bit before the time, but like Virtua, like Virtua Battleground sounds epic. And that's kind of what it is, but I guess you couldn't call it like VR Battleground because VR didn't exist in 1988. But it seems like if they played up the aspect that you are in a virtual reality simulation of different eras, that's a little more epic than Gain Ground.
Yeah.
And thinking of contemporary games that kind of play off this, I was thinking of Humankind, which brings together a lot of different eras. Another thing was
the gameplay seems pretty kind of different, right?
Yeah, what is that one? Sega published the sequel, Rock of Ages, too.
Right. Oh, you're talking about just time traveling or time games,
where it just kind of has fun with eras and mashes them together. Like that's kind of what this game does. I don't know if we will see a screen from it, but the present era on the Mega Drive is actually an arcade, so you get to see candy cabinets and a afterburner machine, which is kind of epic. So
I'll try to pull it up. If you're looking, what is it? Modern era?
Present. If you go to the Hardcore Gaming 101 article on it and scroll down about halfway through, you'll see it. It's the Genesis screenshot. But yeah, well. Let's see. And what do you think about jumping through eras, like going through time? Do you think this game could have done a little more with that? Like maybe have characters from different ages fight each other, like cavemen versus Roman soldiers or something. Like
they could have definitely made it more impactful for the like arcade and the artwork that it's a time traveling game, because if you play this game, definitely does not kind of do that. You know what I mean? It doesn't really show you that. Like if you just saw somebody play it, you just assume it's a medieval type game that's trying to be like what's that game called? Gauntlet Legends or something. Like just by glancing at it. So
right, yeah.
So my thing would be probably play that up. The problem with the game, like I told you, it really does play up the idea. I mean, like. I don't know. It's one of those games you have to try before you even, like, get it, right? If you don't play, you have to get people to put the quarter in. I don't think they did enough to get people to put the quarter in. And I think if it did fail, I don't know if it did. I think it did really well in arcades, because you have to imagine that the people putting these in arcades, it's not like Galloping Ghost where there's 1,000 machines. It's really like 10 machines, and then locals will try all the games, and then they get hooked on Game Ground, and they're like, oh, go have a pizza and go play Game Ground. Like I think this is that kind of game where it just becomes, and it's not a quarter muncher. You actually get to play the game a bit, which is nice. I think that really has it going for it. And if you're ready, we can actually jump into the characters. Do you want to do that? Yeah, I'm in.
All right, so the game features 20 characters, and of all the websites I went through, TV Tropes, oddly enough, had the best breakdown. I don't know why they have this, but if you
so they have like gun wielders, heavy weapons and stuff, right? So I have to.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you
I'm open to
push open, close all folders, it's very very easy to use. I've never used TV Tropes, but look at this. So I'm not going to read everyone's stats and everything, but we can get an idea of them here. So, spears and archers. So you're going to have, and they have names.
Right.
There is Athra, who looks like a Mortal Kombat creature.
Right. The Baraka.
Right. And I'll just read his description so you get an idea of like what these guys are all about. So he is one of the 3 warriors sent in by the United Earth Federation to save the scientists who were captured during testing, in addition to other members of previous rescue teams trapped by the Gain Ground system. So this is a spear warrior. His attacks are Fragile Speedster and Javelin Thrower. His buddy's name is Gascon. Not Gaston, but Gascon.
Just his cousin. Blonde boy.
And he's like a white dude with blonde hair. And then we have Verbal, which is, he looks like Gilius from Golden Axe.
That's one of the things that I thought would have, I mean, that if they tied it in with Golden Axe, it might have made people play it more. But because they tied in almost any game with Golden. It had a fighting game,
right? Yeah, it's interesting. There's a lot of tropes here that they could have pulled from other Sega games, but it was also 1988, so they didn't really have many franchises at the time to pull from.
Right.
Then we have Mars, who's another archer. So these are all the spear throwing guys and archers. In the Magic Knights, we have Fire Knight, and I'll read their thing. He's got a little black beard. So he's one of 4 Magic Knights trapped in the Gain Ground system. His element is fire. He's able to shoot fire bombs straight ahead and set it as a trap to kill enemies that blunder into it. And then we have Water Knight.
Splash. Making a splash.
Not too much to say. I guess it's like an elf.
Weird.
Zaymon, who looks like a feudal
samurai,
samurai guy.
Right.
He is a samurai, I guess. And then we have Glow Knight,
which Glow Knight. The names are so horrible. Like they go from like actually naming them, giving them like Gaston wannabe names, and they're like Water Knight, Fire Knight, and Glow Knight is going to be our knights.
Yeah, and again, he's one of the 4 Magic Knights trapped in the game. Gun wielders. We have Johnny.
Good name.
Johnny's one of the 3 warriors sent in to save the people and rescue teams from Gain Ground system. He's a trooper who can attack enemies from a safe distance.
Look at his power.
Yeah.
Johnny's power.
Oh, yeah.
Good-looking privates. It's
Good-looking privates.
Is it just like a big penis joke?
No,
Johnny...
George, this is why TV tropes is a little confusing. These are tropes.
Oh, gotcha.
So
Sorry,
that's why
bad.
I caught on reading these. I'm like, these aren't their actual fights,
got
moves.
you. I was a little
These
confused.
are tropes about them.
Gotcha.
So he uses a pistol, so he's like the gunslinger trope. Professor, he's a counterpart to Johnny. He looks like Wesley Snipes joining the Boy Scouts, basically.
He really does.
We have Koo. He has an assault rifle, and he's basically identical to Johnny, but he looks completely different. He got dark skin, mustache. There's Kid.
Kid Soldier.
He is a soldier with an assault rifle. So there we go. Heavy weapons, we have Mud Puppy, who's probably my favorite name.
I love that name. That's a really good name.
And Mud Puppy has goggles and a plasma cannon. These guys are strong but slow as tanks.
And Bison.
We have M. Bison, the general. He's a slow guy with a flamethrower. We have Robbie,
which is pretty cool looking, like robot, like spaceman.
Yeah, he's got a fishbowl for a head.
I love it. That's cool.
And then we have Cyber, who looks like Iron Man or RoboCop.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that.
And we're getting into our last group here, Grenades and Boomerang.
Which are all women.
They're all women. So we have Honey, who has green hair and shades.
Kind of looks like Terminator 2's Sarah Connor kind of vibe.
She kind of does. And Betty also kind of looks like her.
Valkyrie?
We have Valkyrie.
Two
again,
guns? They just like chilling like this.
I don't know what she has. Are they boomerangs? What does she have?
Yeah, they're boomerangs, I guess.
Yeah. And then we have Ma'am.
Ma'am? So,
I think Ma'am and Mud Puppy.
Mud Puppy's the best name. Robbie is the best looking with the fishbowl. That's my 2. Bam! I'm putting those in. What's your 2? If you had to pick 2 right here to play.
I guess to be different from you for one of them, so I'll go with Mud Puppy.
You have to.
And then I'll also go...
You sure you don't want to go with the Glow Knight?
I kind of like Verbal, because he gives me Gilius vibes.
Yeah. Hairy arms and everything.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's... I guess these are like teams that got lost in the system. So they've been sending multiple groups in there. It's a little confusing. But let's now throw on some gameplay footage while we talk about the story, so our viewers at home can watch what this game's all about. And if you want, like every so often, you can skip ahead so they can see some of the different eras. But during my internet research, I couldn't really find a cohesive story for the game. I was finding, like the arcade flyers and the manuals. So I'm just going to go straight to the source. First off, we have the arcade flyer, and this is what they told people, specifically people who were buying these machines for their place of business. So, a long period of peace has deprived the Earthlings of their instinct to wage war. The Federated Government, greatly concerned regarding this ever-increasing dangerous situation, developed a gain ground simulation system in the year 2348 in an effort to instigate their ever-waning fighting spirit. However, suddenly, without warning, the supercomputer went berserk and took many of the citizens as hostages. In order to rescue the POWs, 3 of the bravest warriors were urgently dispatched to go forth into the deadly gain ground.
I love it.
So it's interesting because it almost takes the route of the movie WALL-E, where it's like people got so used to not doing anything and peace that they got soft. And so the government's like, holy shit, we've gone decades or centuries without war. We got to toughen these guys up. So they build
Gain
this
ground.
machine. They build Gain Ground simulation system, and then it ends up trapping people inside of it. So there you go.
Sci-fi horror story.
What do you think of that?
That's a better. I did not think that's what the story was when I played it. I literally just assumed that you played these like characters in medieval times with different weapons because why not? And then you just try to gain ground and slowly move through. I thought it was kind of like a what do you say? Like showing different eras of war. As like that was basically it. But I guess it was doing that. Only that it was a machine. I didn't know that story at all. I didn't get that at all.
Yeah, so the three warriors were Betty, Athra, and Johnny. So apparently they're the three that are being sent in the story.
I didn't know this
which
game
is
had
kind of
so
a
much
weird
lore.
mix because Betty and Johnny they're like, you know, man, woman, that's fine. But then Athra, he's like, I don't know what he is. I don't know if that's his teeth or he looks like, I don't know if Johnny and Betty liked hanging out with him. Meanwhile, the Genesis manual says this. So, by the year 3000 AD, the human race had progressed almost to the point of perfection.
Oh yeah, I can't wait.
With no more poverty, war, or discrimination, the worries of mankind seemed to be over. But the human race had created a new crisis for themselves. They had no idea how to defend themselves or how to survive a major holocaust. The long period of peace had diminished their survival instinct. The United Earth government decided that they needed to simulate this instinct in the people to revive their will to fight for their lives if the need arose.
What?
So they developed an awesome simulated war environment run by a supercomputer, the Gain Ground system. However, something went wrong while testing the system. It refused to input and went berserk, with all of its creators becoming its captives. The government sent a rescue party, but they too fell captive to robotic soldiers. After several more futile attempts, one last rescue party was assembled, but this one failed. But if this one failed, the entire system world would have to be destroyed. 3 brave soldiers, carefully selected for their last attempt, have entered this vast, hostile battleground, determined to survive to save their fellow men. So it's
Whatever. I just think it's weird that they're like randomly. We don't know how to survive a major Holocaust. I was like, we're America. What side were you on, Japan?
It's funny because it's like the year 3. So in the other one, it was the year 2348. Now it's almost the year 3000, and they're still like, guys, we have a utopia, but what if the 1940s happen again? And they're like, oh shit, you're right. You know what? Well, we have food, we have porn, but we don't have fighting porn. So let's make a fighting porn machine called Gain Ground, because that's what it is.
Right.
It's like it's just to get your juices flowing and to get you to fight, but not any real. It's just kind of like, oh, we gotta get your survival instinct.
My thing is like, isn't it good not to have war in a future society? Why would you? Why are you like, we gotta inject the bloodlust of war into these people?
Right, and I was almost going to say, like, well, Star Trek has the holodeck, but if you watch the Star Trek shows, there's war going on all the time. It's not peaceful or perfect.
No. But there's not, like, large-scale holocaust, I hope, in Star Trek.
There isn't, but they don't want there to be. So they're like, we got to get ready for, like, Hitler Jr. or something.
Right.
But I think it's wild that a Genesis manual has the Holocaust. Well, not the Holocaust, but
a major Holocaust
mentioned, yeah. The Master System 1 says this. So in the year 1990X,
could be anything.
Everyone was that's
1999 when the Dreamcast came out.
I like how it's 199X, and it's like that narrows us down to 10 years,
right?
Maybe 9.
Maybe 9, yeah.
In the year 1990X, everyone was talking about the latest human versus android competition. The game was called Gain Ground, and people came from everywhere to see the contests at the Shokane Coliseum. The object of the game was for the human contestants, brave and skilled warriors all, to make their way through the land maze that was heavily populated with dangerous android enemies. One day, though, just as the contest was about to begin, the mother computer that controlled the android went berserk. They like using that word, berserk. The innocent folks had come to witness the popular sporting spectacle become unwilling participants. Those not quick enough to escape were trapped in the battlefield. Realizing that something had to be done, 3 of the top game ground runners got together and decided to run the entire maze. Along the way, they planned to rescue the people who had been trapped. Their final objective was to get to the master control room and completely destroy the mother computer. They're just about to get started, and they could sure use your help. Now it's time to find out if you have what it takes to defeat the system, become a game ground runner, and more importantly, save innocent people from a horrible fate. So, this one's actually very different, because it's like making it a Running Man competition in the 1990s, which is just like 10 years away from when the game released. So it's like...
yeah.
It's like in the near future, we're going to fight, and it's not a computer system, it's like androids. So they're saying that a real Coliseum called the Showcane Coliseum, which sounds like it's in Wisconsin. Like, yeah, I went to the Showcane Convention Center the other day.
Everyone's talking about it. The androids versus human battles?
Oh, yeah. Ground? Oh, yeah, we went to the game ground at Showcane Convention Center, and it was a hoot. They had androids, and we just, like... Yeah, that.
Yeah. So, what is the real story? And didn't I mean I don't know if this is going to be in the notes. I don't want to spoil it, but isn't this one of the properties they're making a TV show out of?
I wish.
Oh, I thought it was part of the pickups that never did anything.
I don't think it is.
Maybe I am wrong.
This next one I kind of threw in here. I almost didn't want to, but. If you look at the Japanese manual, the way they write it up, it's like Japanese characters, but then there's little ones on top, which made for like a Google Translate to be very ineffective.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to read the word salad, and maybe we can glean what the Japanese one was saying. But in the year XXXX, so they don't even commit.
Yeah, it could be any time.
The progress of entry reached its climax. It's not a good idea. Words like hunger, poverty, discrimination, it seemed like there was nothing to worry about. However, the human race is unexpectedly in a new danger of extinction of species. It was the first time I had ever seen a woman in my life.
What? Is that what it says?
Yeah, in many parts of the globe, the cause is not clear. Suicide among young people was on the rise.
Nice.
The World Transport Government, which attaches great importance to this problem, will investigate the cause. Research has been carried out to prevent suicide. As a result, suicide cause, the undivided of the second struggle instinct for the peace lasted too long. It turned out that it was Ichiki Ryo, and as it seems of solving the struggle, who have the purpose of survival by moderately simulating the war instinct. It is said that the law is effective. The government of the United Kingdom immediately invested a large amount of money to pseudo-combat experience system to develop the system to give your youth a chance to play with the system.
Okay.
I was encouraged. The system, named Gainland, I think Gain Ground,
right.
The system will serve its purpose well, and the federal government will, of course, Blue, the boy's parents, also stroked his chest.
Nice. So I'm assuming, from what I gather, is that this is an undisclosed year where people are very depressed because they don't have war.
And so they're killing themselves.
In a game called Game Ground instead of real life. And the government comes and the boy's parents and also stroke their chest. Is that...
That's very interesting.
Very
I don't
interesting.
know about that.
I think this could make a good TV show with this storyline right here. Okay. So, Barry, based on the various stories, would you say Game Ground has a good story? And should the game itself had included all this content? All these different stories, especially the Japanese one?
I think there is a really fun, streamlined story here. I just don't think any of these specific different takes really hit it. I think the stupidest one is the Master System, because what it's doing is it's turning the game into Running Man, and it's treating it like it's all real. I think the Japanese one, I can't really judge that, but it sounds ridiculous with, suicide.
Right.
I honestly think the best one is probably the Arcade Flyer, because it's the shortest explanation. It's not so far in the distant future, like the year 3000. I like that it's a supercomputer simulation. And as you see in the game, especially in the ending, which we'll jump ahead to before we close the video screen. I mean, it is just that. In fact, when you turn the game on, you see static. So it's like the game looks old, like ancient, but the lettering has this like TV static, which tells you there's something computery going on. When you start a stage, the static kind of washes over the screen. So it's very clear that even though none of this text is in the game at the start, to my knowledge, it's setting that up. I still think that they could have done something like they do with Fantasy Zone, where they give you a big lore dump. Remember that?
Right.
And you're like, why are you giving me this? Can I just play the game? But I think this game would have benefited from that. Which is your favorite story of all these, if we had to go with one?
I think the arcade story, but I feel like the machine should have played up the idea that, like, these people are warriors from different time eras, and they're all trapped in this game, and it's up to the player to take them out of the game, instead of them just being stuck in a game that has no input with the player. So they could have played up the idea, like, you're helping them exit the stage, obviously, to move to the next one. But outside of that, I think the story's fine. It reminds me of kind of like fighting games today, where it's just a bunch of warriors from different either eras or parts of America, or I mean parts of the world. And then some would say that America is the world. Sorry, guys.
It is.
But that could have worked. I mean, it's just kind of. I think even new games today do this, like League of Legends. It's just a bunch of people from fantasy worlds coming together to play this one game where all the legends are battling against each other. So it's kind of like the same idea here.
Right.
So I would say it's generic, but I think it's generic in a good way, because, like, do you really want them to have, like, 20-page books about every character? They're just avatars that you use to play a strategy game.
I think the game could have hit the right balance, though, and been a true classic if it had simply memorable characters. I just don't think Johnny and the others any of them are really that memorable looking.
Right.
And also just a little kernel of an idea of what the story was. That would have helped. But let's go through the various versions of the game. So the game was ported to the Master System and the Mega Drive. The Mega Drive version, as we talked about, had an exclusive fourth round called Present Age, while the Master System version received its own exclusive last round called the Final Era. The game was also ported to the Super CD, and I want to mention this. So, Super CD-ROM, and it's like the little 2, like squared. This is, I do believe, the what is this called? It's the what's the American equivalent of that? I'm just blanking on it.
Super CD-ROM 2?
Yeah, TurboGrafx. It's the TurboGrafx CD.
Gotcha.
But in Japan, it's called the Super CD-ROM with the little 2. Isn't
that just made? I don't know. That's so weird. I would think, in my opinion, I don't know what it was. That would be like part of the Super Famicom. Is that what they're trying to do?
So, but here's the funny thing. So I reached out to my friend Steve, and I was like, what do I call this? The Super CD-ROM squared? And he did a little research, and he's like, you'll never believe this, but what it is called in Japan is the Super CD-ROM.
Oh, gosh. Hey,
so the two just means say it twice, not squared. So he got a kick out of that, because it's one of those things, he never really said the name of it. He would just say, like, TurboGrafx CD or Super CD-ROM 2 or whatever.
Right.
But anyway, so the Super CD-ROM had a port as well. Despite seeming like an upgrade, the Super CD-ROM version is 1 player only, while the arcade version is 3 players, and the Master System and Mega Drive versions are 2 players.
Yeah, you have to have 2 at least.
Yeah, 2 at least. The upgrade you see with the Super CD-ROM version is that it has rearranged Redbook audio, so it sounds very nice. Oh. The game was released worldwide. However, the Super CD-ROM version only had a Japanese release, but there was a TurboGrafx CD North American port demonstrated at Winter CES 1993. Well, the arcade, Mega Drive, and Super CD-ROM versions are basically the same game. The Master System version is significantly different with altered character portraits, slightly different character abilities, and some of the characters being outright removed, and some abilities being somewhat different, as well as different level designs. The Master System version also features anime-style artwork, whereas the other versions are a little more westernized. Another interesting change is that the Master System version has Player 1 using all male characters, and Player 2 is all female characters, so it's a real battle of the sexes.
Uh-oh, I don't know if I like that.
So how does Game Ground's various versions compare to other Sega games at the time? Do you think they did a pretty good well translating this?
For the Genesis?
For all three of them, from what you can tell.
So, I mean, I played most of the Genesis, and I would say yes. I think they did a really good job. I think having multiplayer was a must, and the fact that they got it on the Master System, I think it's a big plus for the game. So yeah, I think they did a good job.
Are you happy it didn't get ported to like the ZX Spectrum and stuff?
Yeah, because I don't want to talk about those. Like, does anybody really like play like an old Sega arcade game and go, you know what, I'm gonna play it on my computer or my ZX Spectrum, ColecoVision?
Oh boy, George, you're gonna make a lot of enemies.
I'm
but,
sorry.
I mean, this game looks like it was tailor-made for those platforms, so I was actually surprised not to see like a slew of computer ports. Like, I feel like the British kids would have been like, oh yeah, I remember playing Game Ground on my ZX Spectrum, you know?
Yeah.
I remember playing that. But yeah, so it didn't see a sequel, but Game Ground did see several re-releases by way of the Wii Virtual Console, a Sega Ages 2500 remake of the game, which we will talk about soon, and it was included in the Sega Mega Drive Ultimate Collection, the Sega Mega Drive Classics Collection, and the Mega Drive Mini 2, which I actually have behind me here.
Nice.
But from what I can tell, the arcade version never really got ported a lot, so that's kind of maybe one of the uniquities of it. That's a new word I just made up. Uniquities.
I like it.
Well, actually, before we get into the PS2 one, so we have gameplay playing right now from the arcade, correct?
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah.
We do, right?
Yeah.
So I just want to see the end of the game.
Okay.
So let me just see here. I'm actually looking at it myself.
Isn't it like the last 55 minutes of the video? Or 54?
The game ends at like... Let me see.
I put it at 54 minutes, but it's taking forever to load. There we go. Blew up.
Yeah. So 54 minutes. He blew up the final thing.
And you get the pink screen that's like the...
You have overcome the broken Game Ground system. So if you keep watching now, it's actually going to show the end of the game here. So you can see this, a malfunction has been found in the system, and it shows this giant computer with the letter G flashing. The system will temporarily be shut down. And there's like a video screen. Thank you.
And it's the arcade.
And yeah, it's kind of weird. It's like the arcade machine, but it's...
We got a sunset ending. You know that's a good thing when you have a sunset ending in a Sega game. Right,
yeah. And so you see the heroes, they're overlooking a cliff, and then there's this like demon boss.
Right, like an anime cutscene.
Yeah, they're cutting the head off of this like demon samurai.
And overweight bat thing.
And they're killing a two-headed bat. But it's actually the computer game, right? Like, or something. He's like shooting it.
2 Earths?
Is this weird?
Why do they put 2? Okay. I'm assuming one is the fake Earth of the game, and then the other one's our real Earth.
I don't know.
What a beautiful image.
That's the end of Game Ground. But now let's go back and talk about, or go forward and talk about the 2004 Sega Ages release. So this came out to the PS2. It's probably the most attention that Game Ground has received since its release, with a full 3D graphical remake of the game. 3D graphics allow players to view the game from 3 viewpoints: overhead, slightly skewed, and a low-angle viewpoint. Each character has brand new artwork as well, and similar to other home ports, levels have been shrunken down so everything can fit on the horizontal screen.
This is weird.
The game only supports 2 players, and it lacks the extra stages found in the Genesis version. It also lacks the rebalance of difficulty, which is found in the CD-ROM version.
Rom.
The Sega Ages remake features an extra mode, which has slightly different graphics and altered character abilities. However, to access this mode, players must beat the game on the normal difficulty setting, which is quite difficult. And perhaps the best thing about this version is the music, as the entire soundtrack was redone by SSH, who's also his real name is Saitama Saisyu Heiki. So we have some footage here playing of the PlayStation 2 one.
Yeah, the graphics are something else, that's for sure.
I always felt like the biggest crime is the fact that the Sega Ages 2500 series was massive. So many games, and so few of them actually came out to the West. It was just like... looking at Sega's output now, I feel like Japan would be like, why are we putting so much money into something that is landlocked? Like, this is not leaving our country, and yet we've
Never.
released
Not even now.
Not even
they
now.
Can't
like
just re-release them on Steam.
No, and all they did was one compilation here in the West that wasn't even advertised well to give you an idea that what it actually was.
It looked like it looked like ROMs. I always thought it was just like
I always thought it was like a shitty compilation of ROMs. Yeah. And then I looked on the back and I'm like, what is this? And I looked up on Sega Retro and I'm like, oh, it's like a sampler of different Sega Ages titles. But
I will say that the PS2, I like the artwork that they put in the game for the characters. I think it's really cool that we have like portraits that look kind of like Dynamite Cop style artwork. I think that's really cool. I think that's another thing that the PS2 did right. I think the artwork looks good. Graphically, not really, but you know.
Yeah, it's a
These
little
games
muddy.
were budget.
And the camera changing is really unnecessary. Like, you only need one overhead view.
Right.
But having said that, it's really cool that they like gave Game Ground a little love here. It's just unfortunate that, like I said, it's locked to Japan and it's never released over here. It's just Sega Ages 2500 always makes me upset because it's like it's a period of time between like, I feel like 1999 and like the mid 2000s, Sega was releasing so much stuff that never came over here. Like the entire Sakura Tyson franchise, the entire Sega Ages series, full RPGs. Like
those Shining games that like were randomly just on PSP and DS in Japan.
Right. Seventh Dragon. That whole franchise didn't make it over here.
Except for the last one.
Except for the last one. But man, so what's your preferred way to play Game Ground?
I mean, since I played the most, I mean, if I had to pick, like today, obviously everyone should play the arcade game because it has 3 players. But I think the Mega Drive Genesis one is actually really good, and I don't think people should sleep on it. I think it is downgraded, but I feel like it plays just as well. So I think it's very so. Don't be scared of playing the Genesis one on this one for sure. I've never played the Master System one actually, so. But since the story is totally different, I would suggest either the arcade or Mega Drive. You?
Yeah, I would say if you don't already have it, pick up a Mega Drive Mini 2. It's on there. It gives you the ability to save games. Does it have a rewind function? I might be wrong.
Maybe it does.
But
I think save state's good enough.
Yeah, but what I love about the Mega Drive Minis is that it really is like M2 giving you a playlist. Like, I have the EverDrive plugged in, but it's almost too much. Like,
too much choice?
Too much choice. I'll go in there, and I have to go in there knowing what I'm going to play, or I'll just randomly pick something and be surprised or disappointed. But with what M2 did with the Mega Drive Mini and Mini 2, I really like how they specifically picked games because it either exemplified a certain technical element of the Genesis that you don't see anywhere else, or it was just a game where they're like, people need to experience this. And so in the form of Gain Ground like that, I think it's a great way to, play the game, and it's on all versions, so you can't avoid it. But yeah, speaking about the development of the game, it was directed by Makoto Oshitani and Yasushi Watanabe, working under the names of Mac Austin and Yang Watt. And I'll admit, I thought this game was like a East and West like collaboration, because Mac Austin sounds like a guy at like SEGA of America.
Right.
But Mac Austin is Makoto Oshitani's like developer name.
Yeah. It's when he goes to the hotel rooms, he's like, yes, my name is Mac Austin.
He sounds like Rawhide Kobayashi or whatever that meme is, where he's like, I'm a American kotaku, and I like eating beef burgers and wearing my cowboy hat.
That's what I like to do.
So Oshitani was most notably known for working on Sonic CD, Astral, and Iron Storm.
I never played that one, but it's probably good too.
Probably, yeah. In the late 90s, he was the head of Sega CS1. His earliest game was the professional swimming game Water Match for the System 1.
Goat.
And his last credited Sega game was an anime adventure game called Suzumiya Harui no Chokoretsu for the Nintendo DS
One of my
2009.
Favorite. Classic. Never played that one. Classic.
He later worked for Koei, Cavia, and AQ Interactive. Watanabe, meanwhile, he had his first credit at Sega as the director of Gain Ground, which is
nice.
kind of a nice first credit to get.
Oh, yeah.
He went on to be the assistant programmer on Golden Axe, a co-writer and co-director on Phantasy Star 3, director of the Baku Baku Animal series, so I think that's like his franchise. And
I thought it's some guy on Kickstarter was bringing it back. Oh my god,
don't get me into that.
Okay.
His last credit was Blackjack HA in 1998, which if you don't need to look it up yourself, but viewers, if you want to look at Blackjack HA, it's a pretty cool blackjack arcade game where there's like a video screen of the dealer, and then in front of each player are their own little like tabletop screens. So it's like almost like VR blackjack. It's kind of neat. But looking at the past and future works of these directors, can you kind of get a sense that Gain Ground was kind of in their ballpark or in their wheelhouse, I should say?
I would say the second guy for sure, Golden Axe and Phantasy Star. I feel like they all kind of have some sort of like similarity aspects to it. You could tell he liked more simplistic games with Baku Baku in this and more up top down, except for Golden Axe, obviously, but they have the medieval themes going on together. So I find it interesting. I don't know about the Blackjack HA. I tried to look it up, but then they gave me a bunch of videos for Blackjack. How to win at Blackjack. I'm like, dude, what? Okay.
Yeah.
But what is your opinion on this?
Yeah, well, the first guy, Mac Austin, his stuff seems like very, I don't want to be insulting, but like very basic. Like, he would do professional swimming games, and you look at some of the other titles, they're all very, basic games, whereas with Yang Watt, Watanabe, his stuff, it's like Golden Axe, Phantasy Star 3, he very clearly like has an interest in working with medieval science fiction, but then you look at the games he was really like involved in, Baku Baku Animals, just a puzzle game, Blackjack is Blackjack. So it seems like Gain Ground was, I feel like maybe more his than it was Makoto Oshitani. And I could be wrong, but you look at that and you're like, the dude did puzzle games and playing card games, but also had experience with, fantasy and science fiction. And this game has all that. It's like a science fiction fantasy board game. So, yeah, I think it's totally in their wheelhouse. It's strange, though, I can't really tell what they do anymore. I actually checked out their Sega Retro profiles, and you can actually find Watanabe on LinkedIn.
Oh, nice.
But his last, it just says Sega of Japan director for 38 years. And
What?
it could be that he's still working there. He's also on Facebook, which surprises me, and I'm looking at him here.
You know how many old Sega directors and producers and developers I just Googled randomly, and their Facebook is public, and they're always posting the most random cat memes or some sort of meme material? Pretty sure, like, it's weird. Like, they all have Facebooks. None of them on Twitter, none of them on any other social media. It's like 2006, they were like, I'm gonna make a Facebook account, and they never left. They're like, that's we're good here.
It was Watanabe's birthday on March 1st, so happy birthday.
Oh yeah.
Here, so yeah, if I'm on his Facebook site, so he's actually, he shared a video from a pinball show in Pennsylvania, so he's not in the U.S.
Yeah, no, I doubt that.
But yeah, it's just he's just drinking beer, eating burgers, and here he showed a picture of of a blackjack game, not his, but it seems like he's still
addicted.
He's still interested in antique slot machines. He's still interested in a lot of like game of chance stuff, pachinko. So yeah, he's still doing it. But good for him. Happy belated birthday, March 1st. Eat a burger and have a beer. But yeah, going back into the notes here, little development information can be found. That's why I kind of padded things out with the the directors. But I did learn that developers did state that their original inspiration for the game was Gauntlet, and visually it's easy to see. Do you see the comparisons?
Well,
like how would what would you compare?
I'm playing it right now on the video. I've never played the original Gauntlet, but yes, when you look at the gameplay, it's obviously where the inspiration came from. Yeah. I will say, though, that when you see Gauntlet, a lot of it isn't really a strategy game. It's like you open up a door and a bunch of these enemies just run at the character, and you run away and you try to get into a corner and you try to take them down one by one.
Right.
And this one, they don't move. The idea is that you move and try to avoid the enemies. So I think that makes it better than Gauntlet, at least the first one, because I've only played really the Gauntlet 64 and the 3D ones. Gauntlet Legends, there you go.
Oh,
so
Gauntlet
I never really
Legends
played the
great.
originals. So,
Yeah.
what is? I mean, have you seen the gameplay of Gauntlet? You played Gauntlet, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah. Game Ground's basically Gauntlet with strategy,
right?
Elements.
Which I think makes it way better. I mean, in my opinion,
it makes it a bit of a better game. But outside of that, they're different titles. It's kind of hard to say that it's a direct it's an inspiration, but it's not
for sure.
It's not a copycat. It's not like a Pac-Man clone or something.
I'm trying to think of something that would be like where it looks like it, but the rules change so much enough that it's a totally different game. I can't think of any, but yeah.
Yeah. The book SEGA Video Game Illustrations, so I'm holding it here, actually has a page on Game Ground, so we can check that out. I'll hold it up here and then I'll read what I have. But it's the artwork.
Oh, nice.
For the game. But what I love about this book is it's bilingual, so everything is good. Both in English and Japanese. And what I love is it gives a little insight from the illustrators, including their names. So this illustration, which I'll show here again, you can see this online. It's on Sega Retro. The artist's name was Sohi Oshiba. They used acrylic paints and on a crescent board. And the size of the finished painting was 364 by 515 millimeters.
I was going to say
it's
water.
not in a bucket of water.
Yeah.
And their comment was, "This was the first project I was given upon joining Sega. I had great difficulty in catching the true feeling of the game. I endeavored to make a daring and dynamic design." And I love the hand looks like a photo. It's so realistic.
Oh yeah, he did a good job on the hand. It is kind of weird though. Like, does that? I understand it does capture the game, but does that make you want to play the game?
Well, what's interesting about the illustration is it kind of combines everything. So it's got like a robotic samurai, the two-headed demon. It's very clearly like trying to show a mashup of different elements from different eras. Which the game itself, you do travel between different eras, but you definitely don't like see a mashup outside of maybe the main characters looking futuristic in these different settings. But I just thought that was cool. I like learning about who drew the things and hearing their little comments. Speaking about the arcade game, so the world record for Gain Ground was set on July 27th, 2018 by Hirono Toru at the Galloping Ghost Arcade, and amazingly, I was actually there. I witnessed this happening. Their high score was 32,024,435, and I remember it because this dude was standing in front of the machine the whole day.
How long did it take?
He must have been there for like 4 or 5 hours, but probably longer because, I mean, the game itself is short, but you got to build up, obviously, like a lot of points.
Right.
So I don't know how long he was there throughout the day, but the whole time I was there, he was playing it. And so what did I say? This was July, right? So I'm actually I'm looking at my phone to see the exact days. July 18th.
Was he there to just set the record? Do people go there to set records on machines and then leave? Or are there people that like just play the game and go, oh, I beat the record? Well,
the thing is to set a record, you actually have to request to have a like camera set up. So they have a little wheelie cart and they'll wheel it over and a little USB camera will record you on a laptop.
Do they have like a video site where you can see the runs or no?
I think some of the people upload them, but that's what Chris Tang typically does. But yeah, so here is a picture. I didn't take a picture of the guy, but he was just like some unassuming Japanese dude playing it. So there's the machine.
Cute.
There's the arcade machine, and then here is, and I'll blow it up so you can see it on the screen.
Should have just put it in the damn notes so it could.
I know I should have, but there we go.
Oh, it looks good.
So there's his sign.
Nice. So it's been him like 1 and 2nd, right?
Yeah. So he's the Galloping Ghost house high score and the world record.
Till I go and beat it. Whatever, dude.
Yeah.
You keep it for now, but easy.
Consider this: the second is 4 million. He's 32 million.
What? No big deal, dude. His is 4 million too. So it's like, what? Oh my god, really?
First, second, third.
How do you even?
I
have
don't
a
know.
feeling
I
that
really want to
nobody
know
tried.
secrets. But he's just this unassuming dude. There's no other scores to his name. He's not like Chris Tang, who has multiple ones and will tell you a story about it.
We should have had him on the podcast. Why? Why this game? Why not any other game?
While I was there, an employee came up and he was like, "Hey, he just broke the world record." And it was like no one was there cheering him on. It just happened, and then he like left. It was amazing.
That's what heroes do sometimes.
It is. But yeah, I didn't put the pictures in the notes because I just remembered I was there, and I was like, oh, maybe I took a picture. So as far as the legacy, Gain Ground has not really been utilized by SEGA at all. Like you brought it up, George. Like, is this going to be a TV show or a movie? I don't think so. However, the game does have a starring role in Chapter 15 of the Nintendo 3DS game Project Cross Zone. The chapter titled The Gain Ground System. It features stages from the game and even sees the gameplay style of rescuing hostages sort of adapted to the Project Cross Zone gameplay. So
can we just say about Project Cross Zone was such a like cool crossover idea, and like I think it's too long for some reason. Like there's so much like God, you're like 30 hours into the game, and then you look online and you're like, you're 10% through the game, and you're like, what?
Right.
What is this?
I will say, as someone who never completes RPGs and has probably played, maybe, I don't count Shenmue, so, like, think of any, like, beloved classic RPG, even Skies of Arcadia, I maybe put 10 hours in, maybe 8. Like, I just can't get into them. Like, I don't know. But this game, I completed it. I 100%ed it, and I've never done that before. So,
well,
it says something.
You really got addicted to it. A lot of people say that You go on.
It's great for train rides. That's why I got through it, because I would take the train to work, and so I'd play like 2 hours a day. You know,
nice. Okay, train game.
But it's a train game, not trans game. Train
game. But trans people could play it too if they want. I mean,
can.
Yeah. So you want me to play this is an hour, the chapter video.
Well, yeah, this is going to be a 2-hour episode. So,
let's play from the beginning then.
Yeah, so
is
just
there a
kick it
certain
off
time?
and people can see, at least in the first, 10 seconds or so, they can see the end screen. Remember that? That G with the that's the game ground system.
Oh,
so
yeah,
they're there.
the G.
And if you skip ahead to, I want to say, I mean, you can do it at any point, like 5 minutes in, you can see it's the stage from Game Ground, you know, it's got...
Oh, yeah.
But obviously it's the Project Cross Zone style of play where all the players move in their little grid, they stand by, but you can see Arthur from... What is it? Ghosts and Goblins?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's stuck there, so you have to make it to him and save him before the enemy either attacks you or gets to him. And then if you skip ahead to... Let me see, it really doesn't change up all that much, but at the very least we can see, like, at the end maybe, like, you know, the last few minutes. Now I'm getting a St. Jude's Hospital ad.
Nice. You need to pay for premium. Sometimes it's worth it. And I heard if you put a VPN and you tell them you're from a poor country, they give it to you for a few dollars. Just saying.
But yeah, so it's cool. It's I've heard people complain, oh, it doesn't feature any characters, but let's be honest, the characters from Game Ground aren't all that memorable. But
yeah.
If you
it would have been really upsetting if they use a slot for one of the Johnny or the Moist Knight or whatever Water Knight, whatever his name is.
Yeah,
it would have been.
But Mud Puppy would.
Yeah, that would have been cool. But this game has crazy cameos. My thing with this whole game is how obscure the cameos are. That I think it was weird for United States people, where it's like. It has, like, shining characters from Japan. And it has Valkyria Chronicles 3 characters that never came out here. It has, literally, right now, I'm watching Dante hang out with the guy from Night Stalkers. It's like, who remembers Night Stalkers in mainstream? I do. Yeah, I do. I mean, we do, but, yeah, anyway.
So, yeah, so that pretty much does it for Game Ground. But, George, do you have any final words to the people listening about Game Ground?
Game Ground is a game that you get a friend to hang out with you and play it. I think you guys should just play it, the storyline, the idea behind it, all that stuff. Throw it out the window. Just play it. I think if a lot of people just gave it a chance, they would enjoy it. I do think it looks generic and the artwork looks a little generic and it's hard to get people, like I said, to put a quarter in. If I had to choose like all the Sega games from the 80s, it's kind of hard for me not to put a quarter in Outrun or Afterburner or those type of games and then put one in Game Ground, but it's worth it in my opinion. So that's my thing for the viewers. You?
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, just give this game a shot. Like I said, if you have the Mega Drive Mini 2, throw it on. If you have MAME, check out the arcade version. If you have any of those compilations, it's going to be on there. It's a very common game, which I think is why a lot of people pass over it, because they're like, they see it in every compilation, they become blind to it, whereas, you know, they throw something in that's never been included, and people freak out, and they're, oh, this is the only time you've ever seen, you know, Super Thunderblade, or, well, maybe not that one, but, you know, something like that. But yeah, and, you know, not to say like we're some massive podcast, but honestly, I think we're giving Game Ground more
love than most,
more attention than anyone on the internet is right now.
It kind of reminds me of when we did D, even though D does have a big fan base.
Yeah.
when we did a podcast, we had to get like the New York Times to call us or wherever the guy was doing the article for. I forgot what article. It's like because we saw your podcast and you're like the only one talking about this, and I'm like, all right, that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. So maybe the New York Times will reach out to us and talk about Gain Ground. But yeah, check the game out. It's very fun. We don't do this is not a review show, but I would definitely give it a solid 9. Like it,
Definitely.
despite some of the shortcomings in terms of like art and story, gameplay is where it's at and it shines. It's really unfortunate it never was a series like Gain Ground 2. Like it just feels kind of criminal that no offense to Puyo Puyo, but like that game gets sequel after sequel.
Right.
But Gain Ground just one. It's a one and done.
I also think that right now with the way that everything's becoming roguelike, like Dark Souls, when you die, you get upgrades. I think this game is just like prime for that because you die a lot in it. So the idea that you would get a little bit of level ups so you could make the game a little easier would make it interesting as a side game. They kind of did that with Fantasy Zone on the Sega Ages. Remember when they had the collectible ones when you could upgrade and die and then upgrade? So
right.
That would have been interesting.
And this game really would have translated well. I know some people might not like to hear this, but like to smartphones with the vertical orientation, and it's very like on the go friendly. So you could play a stage and then go back to a map screen and like close it out if you have something to do. But it's unfortunate. But what is fortunate is that it exists. We can play it, and people like it, like we do. So next time on Sega Talk, George, do you know what you're going to be talking about?
I actually do not know this time. Let everyone know, including me.
I will surprise you. So this is a Patreon pick from Nicholas Schaefer, and he wants you to talk about Virtua Cop.
Oh, okay. I like Virtua Cop, so that's cool. All right, we're going to be talking about plastic pistols, shooting people in the hands, and saving hostages next time on Sega Talk. Bye.
Pew, pew.